Good morning, everybody. Thank you very, very much for being here. Some of you would have come to the presentation I did yesterday during lunch, which is sort of more of an impromptu presentation. And that video, I played that video and then I did something live to a different colour. And as you can tell from the description, and probably just from some of the things you might have noticed me doing over these few days, my fascination, my passion, my devotion, and my love is towards the exploration of how we can access that sense of connection through our relationship with nature and through the use of sound. And it might be different for each of us. So if you're here, there's a good chance that you have an affinity for sound yourself, or you might just have a curiosity about it. So either way, if it is, in fact, that you have some kind of other way of doing that connection process, then anything I say here that relates to sound, obviously I invite you to translate that, to language that into your sphere of reference, because I suspect we're talking about principles rather than fixed realities. So intuitive resonance, finding the true you. That question, actually, first thing I was going to do was play some of this. So let's do that first together to get in resonance with each other. This is my Shruti, and I'm going to play a little something, and I'm going to invite all of you to participate. You can do it however you want, but perhaps if you consider in terms of intention, just whatever it is that you love about life, whatever it is that you love and appreciate about being here on this planet, incarnated in this form at this point in time, or even any part of yourself or other that you have a sense would appreciate some healing energy, just kind of go into that place, and you can hum or tone or simply just imagine yourself emanating some kind of a vibration with that intention. And you might stay on a single note, you might travel a bit and do a little bit of melody. It's really fine, anything you like. And we'll just do it for a few minutes. So let's do that first.
I apologize for this, but I've got to take this overhead projector out of here.
Okay, watch out for the wires.
I sincerely apologize for this, folks.
We accept your apology.
Do we? Yes.
Bless you, Father. Thank you. The rabbi has spoken.
Yes.
Can we just take the actual unit off and just take
I can't hear you yet. Hang on a sec. Watch out, watch out. Yeah.
We still need something to set it on once we get it down there. That's why we took the whole thing. Thanks, Claire.
Okay. All right. So we're back. Any sound at all that feels good to you, I invite you to do that, and we'll do it for a few minutes just to kind of get in resonance with ourselves, with the space, with the collective. And we will touch in on this idea of performance, but a little bit later on. So this is not performance. Don't worry about that. Beautiful.
one.
So just feel the space of your own body, your own field. And when you open your eyes, just notice the room, notice the light in here. And I'm not talking fluorescent, but the actual light, the clarity. And that's something that we generated together in communion with that which is here today. We'll do more of that a little later on. So, put you here. So this question of finding the true you might suggest that there's a false you. So that's something to consider, isn't it? Because we talk about, oh, find the true you. And it's like, what does that mean? Am I false if I'm not true? Or might it simply mean that there's a you, an I, that is missing from the story, from the equation? Missing in terms of its presence, missing in terms of its voice. So from that perspective, how do we find the truth in ourselves? And of course, there are millions of ways, but you've probably had a sneak preview there that my way is, one of my strongest ways is through sound. And how do we find the truth for ourselves? So that brings us more into that aspect of dowsing. If we're trying to look for answers, can we use sound as a way to get rid of a lot of the mind clutter that happens? And in particular, can we master that to the point where we can find that true self, that true voice, at any time, in any place, in any mood, for any reason? So as I mentioned, my bias, of course, is singing. Or we could call it sounding, because sometimes singing kicks up a lot of reactions for people. They say, oh, I can't sing. It's like, can you talk? Yes. Okay, well then you are singing. Like talking, there's rhythm and melody when we talk. It's just that we don't call it singing. But in fact, we're kind of, how do you say singing and talking at the same time? But there's, say it again?
Stalking.
Stalking? Well, that's, you can get arrested for that. But even better than that, right, without naming it either of those ways, because they have connotations to them, but we can travel. How do we travel in and through sound? And by the way, there are so many stories about different cultures that use sound, and just one of them that I would like to share with you is plant spirit medicine. So if you think about medicine people who, I forget which cultures exactly, so I apologize for that, but there are medicine people that sit with different plants and create relationship to the point where the plant will share its song. And then between them, maybe between different groups or different tribes of people, or however we want to name that, they will exchange songs, like we might exchange books, for instance. Now the thing of that is, that I think is exciting, is that then if someone is sick, and we're more used to the idea that we'll take a tincture or an aspect of that plant, the physicality of the plant, and imbibe it or have it rubbed on our skin or whatever it is that's needed. But there's a song, right? So there's a song with that particular medicine. So when the medicine person sings that song, my sense of things is that enables the plant itself to become the physician, to come into the room and travel inside the circuitry of that body, to travel inside the psyche, the soul, the beingness of that particular human. Because, of course, the plant is somewhat fixed in position. So he or she can't just walk into the room, but through sound, they can travel. And I think that's how they use us in collaboration, is to allow that extra piece of resonance to come into the room and to facilitate and add to the healing qualities. So a question, what is singing really? What are we doing when we sing? And again, insert sound, tone, whatever that word is for you. Why do I do it? And why should you? Now, of course, I can't say you should, but I can say you might want to try it. And of course, do you have to be happy to do it? And I think this question comes to me because I remember sometimes people have said, oh, come on, let's go dancing. And if I'm not happy, I don't feel like dancing. Especially, because the music will dictate the speed that you're meant to dance at, and there's a collective energy happening. And if I'm not up there, then to go and dance, I can't. It just feels, the distance is too great. But you see, the beauty of singing and sounding is that you meet yourself where you're at. So it's a very empathic process. You empathize with yourself. And in fact, let's just do a brief experience with that right now. I invite you to think of something that has an emotional quality to it for you. It could be grief, it could be joy, it could be confusion. It could be a lot of different things. And we don't all have to have the same one. So this is a bit of an experiment to see how that feels to do this in the room together without all focusing on one thing. But we might not all be able to focus on the same kind of mood. So that could be a bit artificial. So I'm going to stop talking in a minute, but here's the instructions. Let's all tune into something that has meaning for us. It could just be our love of the planet, or of a person, or of ourselves. And allow that sound to express itself without worrying about if it's pretty or acceptable or appropriate, but simply authentic. And it doesn't have to be super loud either, right? If it's easier to close your eyes so that you can actually focus more inwardly and be less concerned about this, a room of people, that's worth playing with. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to close my eyes now, and I'm going to think of something that's alive in me, and I'm going to express it. And then notice for yourselves, we'll just do it like for a minute or two, notice for yourselves afterwards, maybe there's something you want to heal, forgive, let go of. See how, if and how you feel at all different after allowing that particular sound, without knowing what it's going to be, to come forward. Okay? Let yourselves breathe. Let it breathe out. And just notice your emotional body, your state of being. How do you feel right now? Do you feel vulnerable? Do you feel open? Do you feel like a little child? Do you feel relaxed, relieved, grateful, sad? Let's do that one more time with a new knowing. again, just notice your energy field. Does it like that? This is a very touching thing to do, in its very literal sense, in its emotional sense. When I ask myself, why do I sing? What am I doing? Of course, it does depend on context, but generally speaking, it's this. It's a form of prayer, and I am not aligned with any religion, but prayer is its own thing. So I'm acknowledging my body, that I have one, or that I am one, depending on perspective. I am honouring, in gratitude, the fact that I am and have spirit, that I'm part of spirit. And I'm also in shock, awe, and gratitude, and curiosity, that I have life, that there is life, and that life generates and creates itself over and over and over. So I would say that it is a way of saying hello and thank you to the universe. And by the way, I'll make this available on my website. It is a way of expressing pain and sorrow, which is why the idea that it always has to be pretty is really unhelpful, because sorrow and grief aren't pretty in the heavenly sense, but I think they're profound in their visceral sense. It is very literally a way of touching and being touched. A sound wave travels. It's travelling through space and touching. And we'll touch in on that, excuse the pun, in a little moment. It's a way of reaching out. So even if it's spoken words, right, we're reaching out. So it's beautifully intimate. And we don't necessarily notice it when we're talking, but we definitely feel it when someone asks us to sing. Because all of a sudden it's like, but people might hear me. They might see me. And it's also a way of reaching in. And to me, that's where the beauty is. And I would say that when sounding, singing, toning, expressing is done mindfully, it is possibly the most authentic way of revealing ourselves from our inner secret world. And that's why I really encourage this thing. You could even do it, and I have done. You can even get on all fours. That's particularly easy when there's no one else around, right? Because you really don't have to think about, will someone take advantage of me? Is this a safe position? Will I look silly? Will someone use it later as a joke? But if you allow your body to take a shape that feels true, then the sound that belongs with that shape can express itself. And even if we can't word what we're touching in on, we know, because we feel, the energy recognize itself. And it's been noticed just by being allowed. And there's something alchemical about noticing energy. And then just briefly here, this is a lot of words, this is probably my most wordy slide. This question around performance. If we wanted to call it a performance, like if we were doing it as a performance, so like for instance when I sing at Grace Cathedral, in a way I'm performing, but I don't change the fact that what I'm doing is real and authentic and of that moment and of that room. So for me, I could say that it's like having a personal service, a personal gnosis, Gnosis. So an acknowledgement to the universe of my divinity, of your divinity, of my questions, of my hurts. and a surrendering of myself in acknowledgement of that which I've received, an acknowledgement to that which I received it from. And that's the whole of it, the whole of life. So you can think of it in terms of being in a moment of service in that way. And just to remind us that we're not alone, let's think about, well, who else sings?
Dolphins, whales.
Exactly.
Tigers, dogs, cats,
Exactly.
birds.
So, and I didn't plant him there. But I mean, I used to spend a lot more time researching the physics of sound. You know, I did some studies on interspecies communication because I was fascinated by the creation of form and how sound and vibration create shapes and form, right? And so there's a reason we're all here, like the insects, the ants, all the different scales of the ecosystem. We all have different frequency bands that we're emanating. And that's why we have all these different shapes. And that's why I am concerned and curious about the mass extinction. Because as we lose those forms, those group forms, what do we lose sonically? And how will it be replaced? Does it need to be replaced exactly? Or does it just mean that it's allowing room for a new species to present itself, to kind of prop up, if you will, like air in a balloon, prop up that aspect of the universe so that it doesn't shrivel. And that's a slightly dramatic perspective, but it interests me because I don't think nature really does anything that's not relevant. So if it's relevant, how and why is it relevant? But that's another whole area of study. And with one lifetime that I'm aware of right now, at least this one that I'm aware of, it's like we have to choose, don't we, what we specialize in. So I'm actually interested in our sort of more emotional, mental evolution towards the spiritual. And then not only who generates it, but who is affected by sound. You're good. Everybody. It's true. And this gets used to the benefit and to the not so beneficial. A book I'd love to recommend, actually, is called The Secret Life of Plants. It has 2 authors. So I'm seeing nods, so some of you already know that. Chris Tompkins and something Bird. I forget his...
Christopher Bird.
Christopher Bird and... What's the other guy's first name? I don't know. But Tompkins, anyway, I think. And that has tons of very cool stories. Loads and loads and loads of stories of different normal people, in other words, not high-paid scientists, but just regular folk doing their own experiments with sound and plants and whatnot. And I actually have some recordings of plant conversations, not with me today. And unfortunately, of course, the negative side of the use of sound is things like, active sonar in the oceans, which destroys so many cetaceans' ability to locate, echolocate, which includes finding food.
It boils their brains.
Pardon?
It boils their brains.
Right. So there's no escape, obviously.
It's louder than any air sound you can get.
Yeah. So, and they're mapping the ocean floor in certain areas. So there's a lot of negative. It's been used in torture, because it drives a person crazy if there's no space. You see, the thing about sound is you need space, you need sound and silence. And if you don't ever get the silence, that's one way to make a person go crazy. So we need that wave. So dowsing, I've spelled it with a U. That's not right? It should be W.
Yes, the English version.
Right.
The English version.
It's the English, yes, this is the English slide. Having a singing practice can allow us to extend our vibrational field and cleanse it at the same time. And we're going to go more into that. There's all these big blobs of things that I want to share with you without stretching the taffy too far. And by the way, I have absolutely no idea what the time is. Anyone?
You've got 45 minutes.
Oh, good. So singing the way only we want to clears others out of our system. And that's back to that thing where if you express the sound that's actual for you, not knowing exactly what it's going to be before you let it out, and it doesn't have to be super loud, remember, so you can still do this for yourself as a practice, you know, in other places where you might have other people. But if we're the only one in there, meaning here, then we can begin to hear our own interior voice and feel our own interior truth. And she is a sweetheart, isn't she? I actually don't know who that is.
Meditation.
Pardon?
Is that like going into meditation?
It is. It is. So the way I experience singing is that it's my form of meditation. It's a very active form of meditation. But when we're cluttered with everybody else inside here, then that's when we get confused. That's when I get confused. And it's very hard then to figure out, well, what's right for me? Because part of that can be imagining and wondering, what do other people want? What do they need? And if we're the caretaker type, which I bet some of us are, then we can extend into their field. And then we're not here anymore. So it gets all really unbalanced. So singing connects us. It actually does make us happy. It changes our chemistry. It is creative because you're being spontaneous. It's honest if it's honest, right? We're as honest as we can be. Sometimes you have to start. You just start. And then if that sound doesn't do it for you, like if you don't feel an alchemy, do it again. Try it. Just listen. You have to listen in a very intuitive way, not with your ears, but with your sense of. You just listen in a certain way, and you will begin to find when you're being honest, because you might start crying. You might feel a release. You know, it'll vary a lot. It is simple. It's really simple. Like you can just do one note. You don't even have to call it a note. It's just a sound. It is true, and it is revealing, and ultimately I'd say, of course, it's healing. And it lets us be the only person in our field for a while. And the reason I add for a while is because, as we all have been reminded this weekend, we do these practices, whatever they might be, and then we might forget to continue. And I think, Wayne, you've talked about this. That then how do you keep it? Like for you, it's about houses. Like then how do you keep a space clear once it's cleared? So considering this a house and a space, how, you know, so there is this element of keep coming back to it. It's like you don't just eat one day and then never eat again. You eat frequently during the day. Similar kind of thing. Keeps us topped up. And it can move things inside of us and also outside of us. And I'm about to tell you a story. This is a bull. And for about 3 years, I was living in England, in Glastonbury. And I came back for Christmas 2012. So I was there for, like I said, for about 3 years. I thought I was moving back there. But life is life. And eventually it's like I came back here, because this is actually where I feel the most rooted, but in a very free way. And so I was in Glastonbury, and a girlfriend of mine, who's another energy worker, I don't quite know why we made this choice, but we decided we'd meet on the top of the Tor at night and get sky lanterns, you know, the paper lanterns that you have a little candle in, and that we would release our wishes into the world. So there's really two ways up the Tor. And the Tor, like depending on which side of it you're looking at, it's kind of like this. So there's a high gradient, and then there's more of a gradual slope. This one actually takes longer. Might be easier, but it takes longer. But I knew I was running late for our date. So I thought, I'm not going to do this way. I'm going to go up this way. So I go around to what I call the back of the Tor, which is a bit like saying the back of a circle. Right, because it's like it's just all there. And sometimes you have sheep hang out there and eat, and very occasionally you see a herd of cows. You never see a bull. But I did, and I'm walking up the path, and this character, this isn't the actual bull, although he really looks like it. He was huge, and he was standing basically at the top of the path in front of me as I walked up, and they have a swing gate, so they have this strong wooden fencing and a swing gate. And I go up to the gate, and it's like, oh boy, you're big, and I'm actually quite frightened of you. So what do we do? I'm running late. I don't want to miss my birthday. And you're right here, and you're about this big as a house. And so I did my first attack, so to speak, on the problem, which was to just talk and reason. So, I said, look, it's my 45th birthday, and my girlfriend is up there, and you're here, and you're very large, and I need to get past you, and I'm wondering if you would possibly mind if I did that. Could I? And he just nothing, just stared at me. I was like, wow. And energetically, he was completely inaccessible to me. Right, there was no manipulating or persuading this guy. So I thought, okay, look, you like that spot, perfect. You stay there, I'll go around you. So I walk over here, and there's a bit of fence here, and it's really good solid fence. So I'm like, I'll climb over the fence. He can have his territory, he can have his thing, and I get to go up the tall. So I walk over there, I start climbing up the fence. Of course, what does he do? And he just moves, stands right in front of me again. I'm like, okay, damn it. And I'm getting that tension you have when you have a job and you're late. Suddenly nothing's fun anymore. And I'm like, so I thought, okay, Claire, you're a strong, bold person. Just be bold, right? That'll do it. So I start going through the swing gate, and he comes up to it, right up to it. And I look at him, and I'm like, okay, that's not it. And I back off again, and it's like, I haven't got time to go around the front of the tour. What am I going to do? And I thought, okay, nothing so far is working, so let's go beyond ideas. Let's just go beyond what I can think of. So, luckily for me, I just gave over, this thing about surrendering, and I just gave over to something else. And the next thing I knew, and this will be loud, so I warn you, the next thing I knew is I pictured what I wanted, because all the cows were kind of joining him too, so they were all huddled together. And I felt so small physically. I thought they could I thought I was in a Stephen King book, I was going to get squished. So I just, irrationally, I just sort of went, for a long time, as long as I had a breath. My eyes closed, because you kind of have to concentrate. And I swear to God, when I opened my eyes, they had created a pathway. They had created a pathway, including the bull. And I was so shocked, and it was like, do I trust it? And I felt, is it Moses who parted the waters? I thought, what if I get halfway through and it all collapses in? But this thing, it's my birthday, and I want to do a sky lantern. So in the end, I was like, Claire, you've created this. For God's sake, just take advantage of it, right? And if you die, you die. It's like, so I walked through, and they stayed where they were, and I got to go up the tour and do the sky lanterns. So it was such a beautiful way for me to learn about the true power of sound and intention. So yeah, I just had to share that story with you. So let's do some singing.
Yes.
And then we're going to switch into a slightly different aspect of this. I'm just going to ask inside what kind of singing to do. I think what I'd I'd like to do is just imagine that we're sort of three groups of people, and let's have an experience of dissonance and of harmony. What that means is I'm going to give you three notes that are very close to each other, just so you can feel what it's like to hold that dissonance against your preferred impulse of harmony. So this will make more sense when you hear it. It's quite hard to do, just so you know. So if you find it hard, don't worry, that doesn't mean you're not doing it well. Right? So if you're willing, so I'll just sort of take this blob of people, or actually maybe this blob. Sorry, blob is not a rude group. Thank you. This group of people.
You give me the dissonant notes. I know this already. We can call the blobs. So this is right.
So if you could just do your best to do this note, and just when you run out of breath, just do it again. And you'll have different lengths of breath. So the good news about that is that means we should have a constant note. And use it as a meditation. So in other words, really feel and sing that note. If you need to close your eyes, because you might need to concentrate in a minute, because you're going to get a note really close to this in a minute. Thank you. Keep that going. So maybe like this aspect of the room. That's it. And just keep that going. Just notice how it's feeling in your body. Does it feel good? Does it feel awkward? Does it feel challenging? Does it feel right? See if you can tune into your chakras. Okay. So take a moment to just see how you feel right now, and then we're going to do a more traditional major chord. So you guys get to start again. Okay. So I'm going to give you the same note. Thank you. And just again, tune into that note. That's your only responsibility, is that note. Keep it going. And feel and hear your relationship to the other notes, to the other people. And when when that breath begins to run out, fall back to the quiet place and just check in and see how that was. How has that left you right now, energetically, as a field? How has your thinking changed, if at all? What kinds of thoughts? How dense are the thoughts? How spread out? How spacious? Was there a difference for you? I would love to hear.
It was much warmer. It felt more, you were wrapped around, it wrapped around me.
Nice. Okay, so it felt warmer and it wrapped around you.
Yes.
And that I'm making an assumption here that you're talking about the harmonious one, the second one. Okay. Yes, Ruta.
The first one I didn't have much of a feeling about, but I found the sound kind of pleasant, almost like music of the spheres. The second one definitely relaxed me.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Well, in Western cultures, we're trained to experience a dissonance as something that needs resolution, and when there's
That's right.
we wait for the consonants. Whereas when we're in the consonants, as the second chord, we don't feel like we have to go anywhere.
That's right.
But almost every piece of music ends on consonants.
Yes. Now, for myself, I actually love dissonance. I find that fascinates me. Like, I like that friction, that rubbing edge, but I like edges in general, because to me that's where the creative juice lies. And it's not a comparison in terms of which is better, but in terms of just noticing what aggravates you, what stimulates you, what pleases you, what softens you. Where do these different kinds of sounds take your thoughts? Because our thoughts do get, obviously, directed in a way by our state of being, our physicality, and whether we're tense or whatnot. Because that stream of relating from the mental to the emotional is a two-way street. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Yeah, the music of the spheres. That's interesting, because that's definitely more of a muddy sound. There's so much sound going on all the time. We're lucky, I suppose, in the way we're designed, or that we designed ourselves, whichever it is, that we only have a certain bandwidth of frequency that we deal with, which, you know, when you have that perfect hearing, especially when you're first born, is 20 to 20,000 hertz. That reduces typically as we age. So it's probably for us more like, I don't know what about the low end, but the high end would be more like 16,000 rather than 20,000, and it just kind of reduces a little bit over time. And by the way, just thought of this, I'll share this with you. There's a French physician, he's passed now, but his name was Alfred Tomatis. Has anyone heard of him? Yeah. So his work is fascinating. He worked with, his father was an opera singer, and Alfred Tomatis was an ear and throat specialist in France. And he ended up doing tons of research. One of his books is called The Conscious Ear, another one is called The Ear and Language. And he explored, in a way, what I would call the chronology of development of our acoustic, of our hearing. And this is the kind of stuff that led to the Mozart effect, because he learned that the cilia, which are the little hairs in our ears, actually get affected by our emotional experiences. So if, for instance, you had a father that shouted a lot at the dinner table, that frequency, and it affected you, right? That frequency where his voice would go when he was angry, your cilia would eventually bend to kind of protect. It's a way we would protect ourselves from the impact. Because remember, sound is touch. It's a physical touch. So when that sound was coming, over time the cilia will actually bend. That doesn't mean they were broken, because that's why there are ways to restore those frequencies. And you can do bioresonance, I think. I forget what it's called now. Do you know, Heidi? Sherry Edwards is one. Yeah.
That can help.
Yes, and there are hearing clinics. It doesn't have to be in the New Age category. You can actually go to hearing clinics, and they will help you discover which frequencies are apparently missing, so to speak. And of course, the beauty and the pathos of that is that when you work to bring those frequencies back, so will the memories return. So to have that ability for counselling when you're becoming whole again, oh, I just got goosebumps. When you're becoming whole again, is really lovely and important thing to do for ourselves, so that we have that support that we need. I'm just going to go forward a bit more, and then we'll come back to more singing, because I want to introduce this to you. This does relate. In a way, it seems like I'm going somewhere completely different, but it'll kind of come around. The theory that I'm mapping out is in terms of how life happens, and I don't mean in terms of how was it born, but how it happens in our interactive modalities. I'm calling it dynamic emergence, and of course the question will be, how does it relate to this? So hopefully I can bring it round to answer that. But what it's tapping into in terms of how do we experience dynamic emergence, and I'll define it in a minute, is a bio-intuitive sensory feedback system. In other words, we feel in our physicality, we feel in our emotions, and our intuition is, there's lots of different ways to think about this, but in my experience, if I didn't have a body, I don't know if I'd hear or feel my intuition. Right? That's how I experience my intuitive information, is because I have a body, and so I feel things, my solar plexus, my heart, or a clenching or a releasing and that kind of stuff. That's how I dowse for what's true for me, is that relationship. And the way I define dynamic emergence, and it's no accident that that's the speaker, is the phenomena of novelty arising when two or more elements meet. So I'm not inventing life, I'm simply putting a particular map or way of looking at a particular lens, because this is already happening. So the phenomena of novelty arising when two or more elements meet. And there are only two rules, so to speak, two tenets, I should say. And one is that nothing is fixed. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is fixed. And the other is that energy waits to be noticed. And that part, energy waits to be noticed, is the point of alchemy. And this tracks back to this idea of using sounds to meet ourselves where we are emotionally. Because when we notice, and noticing doesn't have to be cognitive, noticing can be empathic sounding, but when we notice a state of being, regardless of whether we put words to it, we alchemize it. And by the way, I need to add this piece in. This is why we have this beautiful word, imagination. And I had this lovely realization a few years ago about the word imagination. Because I'm always thinking about creativity. That's a big area of my research. And in A Beautiful Mind, how certain words would come off the page. Does anyone remember that? Like they would sort of highlight and come off, and then he would make these associations between things. And if you do that to the word imagination, the root that comes out of that is M-A-G-I, magi. I hear the, ooh, here we go, right? So that root goes into other words. So we know magi, for those who are familiar with the Christian tradition, the three magi go to meet Jesus when he was born, which apparently wasn't then or there, but anyway. So, but those, yes?
How did we get to magi?
Pardon?
Go from beautiful mind to magi. I lost that transition.
Imagination.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I'm glad someone else, because I was like already on the next sentence. So it's like, so, and those magi, otherwise known as sorcerers, alchemists, or astrologers, right? Those are the three ways of defining magi. So when you put magi in the middle of the word magic, and when you think of magic in terms of imagination, then when we use our imagination, we are practicing the art of alchemy. When we use our imaginations, because of the root magi, which means sorcerer, alchemist, or astrologer, we are actually using an innate aspect of ourselves. I could say birthright. It's just there. It's who we are. That means we're practicing the art of alchemy. And I know we're all rather good at this, because we all have these wonderfully vibrant imaginations. But we may also remember, perhaps at school or just around us, people saying, oh, that's just your imagination. It's like, too damn right, it's my imagination. Right? What would I be without it? What would we be? Who would we be without it? What would we have created without it? So, I just wanted to throw that in there. Because I'm looking at the way the universe talks to us, like through our bodies, which is where the sound element keeps popping back in. These are questions I have that I look through these questions all the time. How does the universe interact with us? How does it interact with me? How does it interact with you? How does it talk to me? Does it have a sense of humor? And the answer is yes. Yes, it does. And here's another story. So, human education on the job, as in on the job of being a human. So, this is a story about a brain scan. I'm 51. I know, you thought I was a lot younger. And when I turned 50, my physician got nervous on my behalf because my mother died at 50 of an aneurysm. And even though I had absolutely no symptoms of anything troubling like that, he's like, Claire, I really want you to have a brain scan. And I'm like, oh God, that sounds really serious. I don't think I want to do that. And he's like, no, please, just, think about it. Take a few weeks, think about it, but better safe than sorry. You never know. Could be genetic, no idea. And I'm like, well, what would that entail? And he says, well, you need to go into one of those machines. And I'm like, oh God, no way. Absolutely, I'm totally claustrophobic at that thought. So, but then I got a further email, and I was like, God, if he's really that concerned, maybe I should. And I knew you could take drugs for that, like, so that you're somehow bizarrely okay with being in this confined space. So that's going on in this part of my life, is this idea that maybe I do need to just do it because now he's got me thinking about it. Over here was my relationship life, my romantic life, which wasn't brilliant, I have to say. And I had a bit of a habit of choosing men that really could not satisfy some of my basic needs as a personality, as a person, which is not to make them a wrong person in and of themselves, but in terms of a match, if I'm looking for that, then what am I doing over here? And on the actual morning of this brain scan, which I was terrified about, he was meant to be taking me. He was my designated driver. And we I don't know, don't ask me why we were doing this, but we were texting instead of on the phone. And he ended up like dumping me over text. And it was like, at that point, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was meant to be picking me up at about 6. And then he said, so perhaps I shouldn't come and take you. I'm like, there is absolutely no way you're not taking me, because I need a ride. And it's too late, and it's a brain scan. It's like, So I said, it's too late. You can dump me afterwards, but you're not dumping me now. So he showed up the next morning. And I actually called a girlfriend as a backup plan, just in case, because obviously he wasn't going to, it's like, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen here. But anyway, he shows up, he says, I promise you I won't do that again. We're fine. I'm like, please promise you won't do that again. He's like, no, I promise I won't do that again. So we go and do the brain scan. Of course, everything is fine. I knew it was, but anyway, better safe than sorry. And then a week later, guess what? He dumps me again. Right. I'll never do it again, and he dumps me again. And I'm like, I don't believe this. So I think it was probably, and I'd actually sort of fallen in love with him, which is something I tended to do, is to get totally like, oh, I'm so open, I love. And I was madly in love with him, and he was completely inappropriate for a long-term partner, just for me, in terms of the things I like and I'm interested in growing in my life, and the things I like to even talk about, you know. And so about a month or so later, when I wasn't quite in that emotional zone anymore, but it was still kind of following me around like a fly. Have you ever done that, like in your house? Have you ever found there's a fly will just follow you? And you're like, you know. So this sensation of incompleteness, because I didn't understand. When I understand something, I find it much easier for it to naturally close off. I'm standing in Barnes & Noble, and I forget what the books were that I was looking at, but they may have had something to do with it. And then my curious mind kicks in, and it's like, okay, let's figure this out. You were having a brain scan, and you were dating this guy, and he dumped you. Let's look at the timing. And this, by the way, is a fabulous thing to remember. If confused about something, always look at the timing, because that's your massive, massive clue. So I'm like, okay. So I've like analysed his psychology. I've analysed my psychology. That hasn't really helped. So let's look at the timing. And I thought about it. It's like, okay, brain scan, dumping. Brain scan, end of relationship. And then I suddenly got it, and I just burst out laughing in the middle of Barnes & Noble, which is a big shop, as you know. And the message I got from my angels, guides, intuitive helpers was, if you really think that you're going to have a happy relationship, the kind you say you want, by choosing people like that, you need your head examined. Exactly.
Oh dear.
I know. So, I can't believe I found this. I found this last night. So this is slightly going back. Kind of think of this as a triangle. Strong body, still mind. The question of who inhabits us. So this thing about using sound to clear to come back to us, right? So who's inhabiting you right now? How many people do you have hanging out in your field right now? Always a good question to ask. And a good way to figure out that you've got anyone in there is when you feel disoriented, when you feel crowded, not surprisingly, when you feel distracted, ungrounded, confused about a choice perhaps. So who's in charge? Who do we want to be in charge of this space here? Who's going to do the best job of guiding you towards your own right future, your own right next step? So another brief story. I was in Bristol. This was during the 3 years I was in England. And I was in Bristol. Someone's making me laugh. And I was talking... Oh, no, I wasn't talking. A friend of mine called Polly Higgins, who's this amazing, amazing Scottish lawyer who is working very hard to get ecocide recognised as a thing at the UN as a crime against humanity, a crime against peace. And she's so lovely. She's full of light. She's the least angry person I know, and she is absolutely like laser with her intention. And she was at a talk, doing a panel in Bristol, which is in the southwest of England. And she happened to mention dynamic emergence, my work. So of course, I got very excited. I'm like, oh my God, someone else said it out loud in public. And she acknowledged me, so I waved, which meant that a few people noticed that I had an association with it, right? And so this guy comes over to me at the end, very nice chap, photographer, and he's like, I'd love to talk with you more. Could we meet for coffee? Hence, coffee. And I said, yes, that would be great. Who doesn't want to talk about what they're into, right? And so I said, fabulous. So the next morning, I was staying at my girlfriend's house, Hedin, and it was absolutely spectacular English day. And when they happen, we really appreciate them, right? So blue sky, blue sky. Even the clouds just were pretty. The sun was perfect. You know, the crisp air. So just lovely. And I was just, you know how sometimes it is just you and there's this happiness. You just feel like you are the sun, just bouncing around, having a really great day. And I was excited to go and have a conversation with a new person, new friend. And I go and meet him for coffee. And the world is wonderful. Like there's spaciousness above me and around me. We meet for coffee. I mean, it's quite uneventful. You know, we have our conversation. And it was interesting. And I was sort of excited about some of what we talked about. But there was also some consternation on his side that was in his field that I wasn't really paying attention to. I kind of noticed it, but I was so enamored with talking about dynamic emergence and stuff that I didn't notice how much of our time was focused on him needing help with his life direction. Then I walked to the bus stop because it's fun to walk down a hill, but I didn't really want to walk back up it. So I go to the bus stop and I'm waiting for the bus. And I luckily notice that I'm not the same as I was an hour earlier. And yet everything else was. The sun was still shining. The sky was still blue. The clouds were still there. Shape, same, you know, similar shapes, not exactly the same. But I felt different and I felt disquieted. So I thought about that for a minute. And it's like, what? What's happened? So I tracked it back. Again, timing. I tracked it back. And it's like, okay, so walking down a hill, happy. Hour later, not happy. What's happened in between time? It's like, okay, I had a conversation with this person. And then I realized that I had absorbed his energy into my field. And the second, literally simultaneous, the second I recognized that, energy waits to be noticed, remember? Anyway, you do, I'm sure. That energy went out of my field. So I didn't have to use sound in that occasion. But this thing about who's in here, and when we recognize that we are a bit cluttered up with other people, just kind of going, like using different kinds of sounds, and again, we'll do a little bit of that at the end, that can help. So if the realization itself doesn't do it enough, and maybe if it's a repetitious thing, for instance, perhaps a parent who has been grating on you all your life, whether they're still here or not, and then they're in your field. That's, I think, probably a good time to do more of the, if you will, excavation work of just continually returning to self with the sounds, so that it's just you in there. And again, you know, so what does coffee in Bristol and a brain scan have to do with singing? So part of it's to do with monkey mind, busy mind, doesn't know what to focus on, latch on to, make a decision based on. That clouds up the waters, makes it really hard to be confident, because it all gets very mental. And it has to do with raising self-awareness. So this ability to feel our bodies, to feel the dynamic happening inside of us between the mind and the emotions and the intuition that we no longer hear when it's like that, when it's busy. It's kind of like being on a bus. I'm thinking of a number 7 bus in London, just full of people, different accents, fascinating, but very crowded. One of the things that I just wanted to let you know about, this and one more slide. Because I'm constantly looking at ways to be free of my, I don't know if my complexity is the right word, but my distracted self or selves, is that I do tons of mind mapping. I teach part-time at a university in the city in San Francisco, and they have big walls covered in what you call idea paint, which means I can write all over them, which I absolutely love, and I don't get arrested or anything, because you can just wipe it off. And because of that, I keep coming up with these maps to help myself understand what's going on. So that's the part of me that loves that analysis, but it's very intuitively driven. So I go up to the wall, it's completely blank, and I just start writing. And then whoosh, 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 this big thing happens. And then I share it with people, because it can be useful for other people. So I just wanted to let you know that one of the ones that this relates to monkey mind. One of the ones that I've done is called 7 Stages of Self-Transformation. And it's a bridge between you and yourself to supplement the singing. So for some of us, singing might be enough. For others, having like more of a mental or an externalized image can be helpful too, as a way to track back in to the center of ourselves. So it's a way to word and image the subconscious that feeds the voice of the you that is missing and expresses the voice of the you that is missing, that might be missing, and helps it to grow. And when you need a break from all the mental processing, go back into your body and sing. So I'm going to play this and just invite us to emulate this beautiful character here. And just sing however you want to. Again, without thought, without planning. And I'm going to pick some different notes. How about this? So again, you can hum, you can harmonize, you can do whatever you like. I think I have a few minutes. I want to give you a couple of notes or vowels to use for specific things. And this is experiential. So if you have a foggy mind, when you have a foggy mind moment, I have found that, and I'll show you, I call it piggy face. Okay. And what I visualize, and you might visualize something different, and you may not visualize anything at all, but what I visualize, if you think of the, I guess the hi-hat on a drum kit, like the big cymbal, right? I, for whatever reason, picture like this cymbal coming through, painlessly, coming through my mind for some reason around here, and just going straight and parallel. That's what I tend to visualize. You may see something completely different. So don't worry about that. And the sound is a hard sound. So I'll demonstrate it briefly. And you can kind of scrunch up your face here and there. The funny thing with this one is it does make you laugh, right? So it's, even if you're like really, sometimes when I think too much, I look really troubled. And if you do this just even 2 or 3 times, you will start laughing. And it's a wonderful way to break that energy and whoosh, like there's this spaciousness. So let's try this together and see for yourselves how it is for you when you do this. But you've got to fully commit, because it's a really hard, it's like you're throwing a frisbee, but like parallel to the ground. And you are definitely not sounding pretty with this. So no responsibility there. So on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. So how do you feel? Is there more space? I hope for you there is, but different vowels can do different things for different people. But it's like when I'm taking things too seriously, if I do that sound, it's like I've gone in there with a vacuum cleaner or a leaf blower on full power, and it's just like everything goes out. It's just gone, and that's a wonderful relief. The other one I'll give you is R, like A-A-H-H-H-H-H, R. And what I found is that that's really lovely for the heart. So when you need some self-empathy, try, and also actually that one seems to go for the solar plexus too. But, and if you can, with this one, I invite you to be sort of more upright in your posture. With the piggy one, I think it's all right to kind of, do that. And let your body move, because the chi is moving. So it's like Tai Chi, but sound chi, So let it move how your body wants to go. Don't worry about rigidity. That would be very counterproductive, obviously. So I'm just going to start doing ah, and I invite you to join in on any note that suits you. And if you wanted to put your hand on your heart, that might feel nice too. And just notice how your energy field feels, how your body feels, how your face feels. Thank you.
Thank you.